The security guard's voice echoes across the busy mall entrance as he blocks the elderly man's path. "We don't allow beggars or homeless people in here, sir. You need to move along." 82-year-old Frank Morrison adjusts his worn jacket and quietly reaches for the faded purple heart ribbon pinned inside his pocket, while shoppers pause to stare at the confrontation unfolding before them. If stories like Frank's remind you why we must never forget our heroes, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments below about a veteran who changed your life. These stories need to be heard, and your support helps me share them with the world. Frank Morrison had only wanted to buy his granddaughter a birthday present. At 82, his legs didn't carry him as well as they used to, and the walk from the parking lot to Westfield Mall had left him slightly out of breath. His old brown jacket was frayed at the edges, and his shoes had seen better days, but they were clean and comfortable for his aching feet. The trouble started the moment he approached the main entrance. Security guard Derek Williams, a man in his 30s with perfectly pressed uniform and an attitude to match, took one look at Frank's appearance and immediately stepped forward to block his path. "You can't come in here looking like that," the guard said loudly, drawing attention from everyone nearby. "This is a family shopping center, not a homeless shelter." Frank stopped in his tracks, confused. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. I just want to shop for my granddaughter's birthday gift." Derek's voice grew louder, ensuring that the growing crowd of shoppers could hear every word. "Look at yourself, old man. That ratty jacket, those beat-up shoes. You're making our customers uncomfortable. We have standards here." A woman with 2 young children hurried past, pulling her kids closer as she whispered something about staying away from strange people. A group of teenagers stopped to watch, some pulling out their phones to record what they clearly thought would be entertaining drama. Frank felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Sir, I have money to spend. I'm not causing any trouble. I just want to buy a doll for my 7-year-old granddaughter." "Money?" Derek laughed harshly. "What money? You probably found some loose change in a parking lot. We don't want panhandlers disturbing our paying customers. There's a McDonald's down the street where your kind belongs." The crowd was growing larger now. Some people looked uncomfortable with Derek's treatment of the elderly man, but nobody spoke up. Others seemed to agree with the security guard, nodding their heads and making comments about how homeless people were ruining nice places. "I'm not homeless," Frank said quietly, his voice shaking slightly. "I live in an apartment on Maple Street. I get my pension every month. I just want to shop like everyone else." "Pension?" Derek scoffed. "What kind of pension would someone like you get? You probably collect bottles for a living." "Look, I'm trying to be nice here, but you need to leave before I have to call the real police." Frank's hand instinctively moved to his jacket pocket, where he kept his Purple Heart. The medal had been with him for over 50 years, a reminder of the worst and best day of his life in Vietnam. But he didn't pull it out. He had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting, especially when you were outnumbered and everyone was staring. "Please." Frank tried one more time. "I just need 15 minutes to find a birthday gift. My granddaughter Sarah is turning 7 tomorrow, and I promised her I'd get her something special." "Your granddaughter?" Derek's tone became even more mocking. "Sure, and I'm the President of the United States." "Old man, you're obviously having some kind of mental episode. There's no granddaughter. There's no pension. You're just another homeless guy trying to get inside where it's warm." The crowd murmured their agreement. A well-dressed man in a business suit shook his head and said, loudly enough for everyone to hear, that it was sad how these people lived. In fantasy worlds, a woman commented that someone should call social services because the old man was clearly not right in the head. Frank felt tears forming in his eyes. In all his years, through all the hardships he had faced, he had never felt so small and humiliated. The young faces in the crowd looked at him with disgust and pity. The older faces looked at him with fear, as if poverty might be contagious. "I'm not crazy," Frank whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. "I was just trying to buy a birthday present." Derek stepped closer, using his size to intimidate the frail old man. "Listen carefully, because I'm only going to say this once more. You have 30 seconds to get off this property, or I'm calling the police and having you arrested for trespassing. And trust me, they won't be as patient as I've been." The crowd pressed closer, their phones still recording, waiting to see what would happen next. Some were already sharing the videos on social media with captions about crazy homeless people. Frank looked around at all the faces staring at him, judging him. dismissing him as worthless. But then something changed in Frank's expression. He straightened his shoulders just a little, and there was a flicker of something in his old eyes that hadn't been there before. He reached into his jacket pocket, not for the Purple Heart, but for his cell phone. "I think you're right," Frank said quietly. "I should call someone." Derek smirked triumphantly. "Finally, call whoever you want, but do it from the parking lot. Your time is up." Frank dialed a number he knew by heart and waited for someone to answer. When they did, he spoke in a voice that was steady and clear. "Hello, this is Frank Morrison. I'm at Westfield Mall and I need you to come pick me up. There seems to be some kind of misunderstanding here." Derek rolled his eyes at the crowd. Now he's calling his imaginary friends. This guy really is nuts. But Frank wasn't done talking on his phone. He continued speaking to whoever was on the other end of the line. "Yes, I'm at the main entrance. There's quite a crowd here, and please, bring the others with you. I think they should see this." When Frank hung up, Derek was already motioning for him to move toward the exit. "Come on, old man. Whoever you called can pick you up in the parking lot. You've wasted enough of everyone's time." The crowd began to disperse, losing interest now that the confrontation seemed to be ending. But Frank didn't move toward the exit. Instead, he found a bench near the entrance and sat down, folding his hands in his lap. "What are you doing?" Derek demanded. "I told you to leave. I'm waiting for my ride." Frank replied calmly. "They'll be here in about 10 minutes. Derek's face turned red with anger. "You can wait in the parking lot. You're not sitting in my mall looking like a vagrant." But Frank remained seated, his eyes fixed on the glass doors leading to the parking lot. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, he seemed peaceful, almost like he was smiling inside. 10 minutes later, the glass doors opened, and Derek turned to see who was coming to collect the troublesome old man. His expression changed immediately when he saw not one person, but 6 men in military dress uniforms walking through the entrance. The man leading the group was a tall, stern-looking officer with silver eagles on his shoulders. Behind him walked 5 other servicemen, their uniforms crisp and their bearing unmistakably military. Every person in the mall entrance area stopped what they were doing to stare at the impressive group. The colonel walked directly to Frank and snapped to attention before offering a perfect salute. "Colonel James Henderson, reporting as requested." Sir. Frank slowly stood up from the bench, and suddenly his posture was different. His shoulders were straight, his head was high, and there was an authority in his bearing that hadn't been visible before. "At ease, Colonel," Frank said, returning the salute with practiced precision. "Thank you for coming so quickly." Derek's mouth fell open as he watched the scene unfold. The other shoppers who had gathered to watch were equally stunned. This was not what anyone had expected. Colonel Henderson turned to face Derek. His expression is cold. "Are you the security guard who refused to allow General Morrison to enter this establishment?" "General," Derek's voice cracked. "General Morrison, Frank Morrison, retired Brigadier General, United States Army," the colonel said firmly. 2 tours in Vietnam, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, Silver Star, and Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. He commanded the 3rd Infantry Division and later served as senior military advisor to 3 presidents. The crowd that had been laughing and recording videos just minutes before now stood in stunned silence. The teenagers who had been making jokes quickly put away their phones. The businessman who had mocked Frank's mental state suddenly found his shoes very interesting to look at. Derek felt like the ground was disappearing beneath his feet. "General, I didn't know. I mean, you looked... I looked like what?" Frank asked quietly, like an old man who needed help, like someone who deserved to be treated with basic human dignity, regardless of his appearance. One of the other officers stepped forward. "This is Master Sergeant Rodriguez, sir. General Morrison saved my grandfather's life in Vietnam. When Grandpa was wounded and left behind, the general went back for him alone, carried him 2 miles through enemy territory to safety." Another officer spoke up. "Captain Mitchell, sir. General Morrison established the Veterans Housing Program that's helped over 10,000 homeless veterans get back on their feet. He spent his retirement working at soup kitchens and VA hospitals." Frank held up his hand to stop them. "That's enough. I didn't ask you here to list my accomplishments. I asked you here because I wanted this young man to understand something important." Derek was sweating now, realizing that his career was probably over and that he had just humiliated a genuine American hero in front of dozens of witnesses. Frank turned to address not just Derek, but the entire crowd that had gathered. You all saw an old man in worn clothes and decided he didn't belong in your nice clean mall. You assumed he was homeless, crazy, worthless. You recorded videos to laugh at later. You treated me like I was less than human. The shame on the faces around him was visible now. Parents pulled their children closer, not to protect them from Frank, but to shield them from witnessing their own cruel behavior. But here's what you didn't see, Frank continued. You didn't see the young soldier who threw himself on a grenade to save his squad. You didn't see the officer who spent 30 years serving his country. You didn't see the grandfather who just wanted to buy his granddaughter a birthday present. Colonel Henderson stepped forward again. General, what would you like us to do about this situation? Frank looked at Derek, who was trembling and clearly expecting the worst. Derek, how long have you worked here? 3 years, sir. Derek whispered. Do you like your job? Yes, sir. I did. I probably don't have it anymore. Frank nodded thoughtfully. You're probably right about that. But before you go, I want you to understand something. Every day, you see hundreds of people walk through those doors. Young people, old people, rich people, poor people. Some of them might be struggling. Some of them might need help. Some of them might have stories you can't even imagine. Derek nodded, tears starting to form in his eyes. Your job isn't to judge people based on how they look or what they're wearing, Frank continued. Your job is to keep everyone safe and help them have a good experience here. Today, you failed at that job completely. I'm sorry, Derek said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry, General. I don't know what to say. Frank studied the young man's face for a long moment. Derek, how old are you? 28, Sir. Do you have family? People who depend on you? Yes, sir. A wife and a 2-year-old daughter. Frank turned to Colonel Henderson. Colonel, do you think this young man learned something today? I believe he did, Sir. Frank looked back at Derek. I'm not going to ask for you to be fired, but I am going to ask you to remember this day. Remember how it felt to realize you had misjudged someone completely. Remember how it felt to treat another human being badly for no good reason. Derek was crying openly now. I will, sir. I promise, I will. Frank reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his purple heart, holding it so everyone could see. This medal was given to me after I was wounded in Vietnam. I was 19 years old, scared, and thousands of miles from home. But I had a job to do, and I did it. He put the medal back in his pocket. Today, you had a job to do too. You were supposed to serve the public, to help people, to treat everyone with respect. Instead, you chose to humiliate an old man because you thought he didn't matter. The entire mall entrance was silent now. Even the background music seemed to have stopped. Everyone was hanging on Frank's every word. Derek, Frank said, I forgive you. But more importantly, I want you to forgive yourself and do better. Use this experience to become the kind of person who lifts others up instead of tearing them down. Derek nodded frantically. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll try to earn it. Frank smiled for the first time since walking into the mall. Now, would you mind escorting me to the toy store? I still need to buy my granddaughter Sarah her birthday present. She's turning 7 tomorrow, and I promised her something special. Of course, sir, Derek said immediately. Right this way, General. And sir, the doll is on me. It's the least I can do. As the group walked deeper into the mall, with Colonel Henderson and his officers flanking General Morrison and Derek leading the way, the crowd of shoppers slowly dispersed. But the conversations continued for hours afterward. Videos that had been recorded to mock an old man were deleted in shame. Parents used the moment to teach their children about respect and compassion. And in the toy store, a young security guard watched with tears in his eyes as an 82-year-old war hero carefully selected a baby doll for his granddaughter, paying for it with crisp bills from a worn leather wallet while surrounded by some of the most decorated officers in the United States Army. Frank Morrison got his granddaughter her birthday present that day, but more importantly, he reminded everyone who witnessed what happened that heroes don't always look the way we expect them to, and that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance. The next day, Derek Williams submitted his resignation to mall management, but it was rejected. Instead, he was promoted to head of customer service and asked to develop a new training program focused on treating all visitors with respect and dignity. The program was eventually named the Morrison Initiative, and it's now used in shopping centers across the country. Frank Morrison continues to live quietly in his apartment on Maple Street, visiting his granddaughter regularly and volunteering at the local VA hospital. He never talks about what happened that day at the mall, but Derek Williams visits him every year on the anniversary, bringing flowers and a sincere thank you for the lesson that changed his life forever.